Sanford served one term in the North Carolina Senate. And while he enjoyed it, he really had a chief executive's personality. He wasn't really built for a legislative body. He wanted to be the boss. He wanted to be in charge. He wanted to be governor of North Carolina.
The man on the go for the state on the go. Terry Sanford, Democrat for governor.
Truth of the matter is this, that we are backed by nobody, that we are going to be fair to everybody, that we aren't going to oppress or push down any segment of the economy, that farmers are going to get fair attention, that working people are going to get fair attention, and we are not going to be controlled or bound by any special interest. We're going to be fair to everybody. We're going to be controlled by none.
The man on the go for the state on the go. That's Terry Sanford, a front-line fighting man with progress as his program.
The first time I had an impression of him was when I went down for his announcement, when he talked about his vision for North Carolina, the audacity that we needed to have to make the big steps, to make the big progress that North Carolinians needed and deserved to have. That's when I saw a man who had a vision for the state, who cared about people, and a man who had strength and courage and toughness, and who would make it happen. And let me tell you, it was contagious. Young people saw it. They said, oh man, we can go places. We can be somebody. Terry Sanford will lead us.
As in much of the South, North Carolina was still a one-party state. Most of the elections were effectively decided in the Democratic primary, and that's the situation that Terry Sanford faced in early 1960. He'd been around politics for a long time. He'd managed a successful campaign for the U.S. Senate, and yet there was always the issue of race lurking out there, and that's a very unpredictable issue. And even though he had prepared, he never really knew how it might come up and how he would respond.
I grew up in deep South country, Mississippi country. We knew we were Klan country. We didn't really fully understand that North Carolina was Klan country. After I moved here in particular, I discovered North Carolina was one of the biggest Klan centers in the country, not just the South. There wasn't any place that didn't know the Klan in one time of its manifestations or another. The one mark of a white Southerner was that he would see to it that this was white man's country, first, last, and always.
I grew up during the 40s and the 50s. So on one occasion, I decided I wanted to use the white men's bathroom, which I did. And as I emerged from the bathroom, I was confronted by a group of local Klansmen. And they really beat me up, roughed me up, and it was a frightening experience to have to go through that. I got away because at that time, the one thing as a black person in the South you learned to do was run.
Beverly Lake was a standard bearer for the Old South, a beloved law professor at what was then Wake Forest College. In the 1950s, he became the state's most articulate spokesman in favor of preserving segregation.
And that of the party whose Attorney General advised the military occupation of Little Rock. And
there were plenty of people that didn't like Terry, and they didn't like what he was doing. Those old segregationists, those old racists, they hated him.
I hope you've noticed that I haven't tried to stir up racial bitterness just to get a few votes. I know how to handle this integration matter. We're going to handle it with our brains and not with our mouths. But I'm talking about...
He, in his heart, knew that the South was changing and that it was time to offer equal opportunity for all its citizens. And so he was trying to prepare North Carolinians for that, at the same time not wanting to get bogged down in a racially raw primary with Beverly Lake.
You simply had to mute the issue wherever you could. That's not to fool the people. I think most people understood that this issue had to be dealt with. I truly think that most people wanted to keep down the explosive nature of it.
Terry is, for any white Southerner, a man who looks liberal as hell in the context of 1960. He was a man who looked at his state and knew that what it needed had almost nothing to do with segregation, and that the way it was finally going to get out of the pit was going to be by emphasizing the basics.
As a mother of 5 children, I'm particularly interested in your education program.
Well, I have made
Education was a political strategy for Terry. Terry was out there saying, you know, your children's future is about education, and you need to get behind me to support me so that your children are going to have a better life.
You had to have a strategy for the long run of what you wanted to accomplish for the state, and you had to have a strategy for how to stay alive, and I mean politically alive. Basically, the strategy was to keep the people's view on something very positive that they cared about.
Terry Sanford's big Saturday tour. As you can see, the helicopter is now coming in.
When Terry was out, he did an incredible job of organizing and mobilizing voters in North Carolina, going from county to county, meeting with precincts. And Terry was the ultimate networker.
Glad to see you again.
Yeah,
how's the persimmon crop this year?
they're good.
Terry Sanford really was saying to all North Carolinians, North Carolina is going to be different if you elect me as the governor. It was going to be very much about integrating the state of North Carolina in every way.
Sanford was very much the voice of a new generation. The Democratic Party was really divided during this primary runoff. This was an intense, competitive race by 2 guys who were very capable and argued their points very well. Emotions ran very high, families were split, friends were split. It led to a record voter turnout.
Congratulations, sir.
I remember looking around in the back of that big car, thinking, what in the world is I doing sitting here? Can we now do what we said we were going to do? What is it today we can do to change things for the good?